How do you know when you are taking time for yourself in a way that is good for you, like having some alone time or downtime to rest, to recharge, or when you are socially isolating yourself in a way that isn't good for you? Today we're going to talk about how to know which one you are likely doing. We're going to talk about social isolation and what some of the main causes of it are. And we're going to talk about what it looks like on the outside and on the inside so you can figure out if this is what you are doing. And then we are going to talk in another talk, the next one, which is going to be about how to stop socially isolating if it is in fact something that is creating problems for you, that is impacting your mental health in a negative way. Yeah? Okay. But before we get into that, my name is Kristina, and I am a registered clinical therapist, a researcher, a coach, and the creator of my membership community, the Shift Society, where we are taking this mental wealth work to the next level and really working on building strong mental wealth from the inside out, and doing it with connection, community, and support and research-backed tools. You can get more information about that in the description below. Either way, I help heart-centered humans break through the crap that is holding them back so that they can like themselves and their lives more every day. And social isolation is a thing that can really get in the way of you liking both yourself and your life. And this tends to be something that comes up a lot for people around different life circumstances, but I'm talking about it right now because I live in the Northern Hemisphere on the west coast of Canada, where it is very kind of dark and dreary and gray and rainy from about November until about May, with little bursts of sunshine here and there, but it tends to be pretty gray and gloomy here, which has an impact on a lot of people's mental health, which when we are already feeling kind of blah or down or depressed, we tend to socially isolate, which then makes the problem even worse. So exactly that. We're going to talk about what are the risk factors for social isolation? So why people tend to socially isolate. And then, like I said, we're also going to talk about signs that you are socially isolating, as opposed to just taking, like I said, that time for yourself that is rejuvenating and good for you. Where does it cross over into being something that is detrimental and sometimes even destructive to your mental health and well-being? So what are some of the risk factors? What are some of the things that cause people to socially isolate? And one of the big ones is grief. If you've ever been through grief, you know that when you are grieving a loved one, you kind of just a lot of times want to shut yourself away. Maybe not everyone, but the tendency for most people is to just want to shut themselves away. They want to avoid everyone and everything. Grief is an incredibly painful, difficult, complex, often confusing process that does tend to draw people into that isolation. So if you are in grief right now, then you might be isolating yourself. There's a good chance that you are. The next one is if there is domestic violence. So people who are in abusive relationships do tend to socially isolate. Not even just physical violence, but also if there's psychological abuse, if there's some mental abuse, if there's a lot of like controlling behavior going on, like if the partner doesn't want the partner to leave their side, there's high elements of codependency, but not, just regular codependency, like pretty extreme where there's a lot of control going on there, where there might be punishment, there might be consequences, there might be really kind of bad things that happen in the relationship if the person wants to go out and be social, wants to go out and have a life outside of this one singular relationship, or even be social with that person, with other people. That person can feel very threatened, and that can cause a lot of problems. And then the person, the other partner who wants to go out might be like, it's just not worth it. it's just going to cause too many problems. It's going to impact me in a negative way when they have an outburst. And then also, like I said, if there is, physical violence, then there can be embarrassment around people seeing wounds. There can be embarrassment around someone, finding out what is going on, a lot of fear around that, what's going on at home. So then all of those factors would contribute to someone isolating themselves from friends, from family, from doing social activities. So that is a big one as well. The next one here is social media. Social media can be a reason why people self-isolate, and for a bunch of different reasons. But what the research shows is that one of the big ones is because social media is very stimulating, and you're seeing people and you're watching people, and maybe even a little bit interacting by leaving comments on stuff or liking videos or sharing things. So you get kind of this little bit of like a touch of social engagement. But it's not a two-way conversation more often than not. It's not a real connection. And I'm not saying that you can't connect with people on social media. You can absolutely, in different groups, like I know in my community, in the Shift Society, it's a closed group only for members, but people in there have a lot of dialogue. They have conversations, and then a lot of people have met people in there that have become like best friends and have relationships on their own outside of the group. But it is more of a real social activity, because there is conversations, like I said, there's people dialoguing with each other, there's people feeling like genuinely connected to other humans. But when it comes to more kind of passive social media engagement, you feel like you're doing something, and you feel very stimulated, because social media is very stimulating. There's lights, there's sounds, there's colors, there's information, there's stuff you're taking in. So it can be very exhausting at the end of it. You can kind of put your phone down and be like, wow, that was a lot. And then you don't have much energy left to socialize, but you're actually not getting the real benefits and rewards of real, genuine human connection. So too much social media can actually cause you to socially isolate for those reasons. The next one is unemployment. And I remember being in this state after I finished my university degree, and I didn't have a job. I was under the delusion back in kind of the earlier 2000s, thinking that if I went and got a general arts degree, people would be lined up at my door wanting to hire me and pay me a good, decent, relatively high income to come and work for them. And much to my surprise, there wasn't a long lineup of employers eagerly seeking out someone with an arts degree that had a concentration in both linguistics and psychology. So during that period of time, I was really socially isolating myself, partly because I didn't really have any money to do the things that I thought my friends would want to do, and partly because I was embarrassed that I didn't have a job and I couldn't find a job, and partly because I was kind of depressed with going day in and day out of filling out job applications and filling out cover letters and looking for jobs and being confused and overwhelmed, but at the same time kind of bored and disconnected. And if you have ever been in that situation where you're looking for a job and you don't have a set of credentials that are in hot pursuit, then you know how hard it can be to be going through that. And so that can be another really common reason why people would socially isolate. And another reason why you might be self-isolating is if you have a chronic health issue that prevents you from getting out of the house easily. So you might just say to yourself, well, it's going to take too much effort, or I'm going to need too much support, it's going to be too tiring, I'm just not going to bother, and I'm just going to stay home and avoid everyone. And kind of on a similar vein, if you are new to a new community, you've just moved and you're there and you don't really know anyone, and you might say to yourself, well, it's going to require a lot of effort to get out and socialize and meet people and connect, so I may as well just stay home because I'm already dealing with the stress and the strain of being in a new place. It's going to be hard to start from scratch in all of my social relationships. So that's another risk factor. Again, with everything that's happened in the past few years, many of us are now working from home more, which can be really great, especially for those of you who love being at home and really like having a little bit more flexibility and freedom. But it can also be very socially isolating. And I was finding that for myself as I moved to doing most of my work online. As I work to doing most of my appointments with people around the world, most of my one-on-one appointments with people around the world on the computer, I wasn't going into my office as much and doing as many real life with real three-dimensional humans. And so I have started doing that a little bit more. I've been seeing people in person more in my office, and that has been great for me particularly. I need to have a reason to get out. I need to be out. I need to be around the three-dimensional humans because I definitely notice a decline in my mental wealth when I'm not. But for those of you who don't necessarily have the option and are working primarily from home now, it is easy to just wake up, do your work, finish your day, do your evening routine, stay home, make your dinner, watch your Netflix, maybe have a little workout in your living room, and then go to bed and kind of get up and do it all over again. Or if you have a family, you're just sort of at home when everyone's home and not going out, not connecting to other peers. And so that can be a big one. It's easier to be at home, but that doesn't mean it's always better for us. Another sort of reason why people socially isolate is, like I mentioned at the beginning, seasonal change. So especially for those of you who live in the part of the world where it is darker for about half of the year, it gets darker earlier, the sun goes down earlier and rises later. And especially too, if the climate that you live in tends to be kind of cold and gloomy, not even just cold, like cold, and people that live in cold and sunny places in the world tend to have higher levels of mental health and well-being in the winter months than those who live in gray and gloomy climates for those winter months. So if you live in a place that gets dark early, so there's not a lot of sunlight, and it's gray and it's gloomy for a good chunk of the year, then you are likely to feel more down or depressed. Seasonal depression is a real thing. And then with depression often comes social isolation. So that can be another risk factor for social isolation. And then a big one, a really common one for many among us is if there has been conflict or a relational rift with someone you are close with. Dealing with that kind of pain of losing a friendship, losing a partner, losing just like a close relationship with a parent, if there is, or other family member, if there's some kind of rift there, that can be very painful. And with that pain, there can come a lot of shame that can show up, and just feeling, saying things to yourself like, I'm unlovable, or I'm not good enough for them, or there's something wrong with me. And then there can be a lot of shame, like just feeling really insecure, feeling really bad about yourself. And then, telling yourself stories like, well, I shouldn't, nobody else is going to want to be around me, or nobody else really cares about me. So I'm just going to avoid everyone and isolate myself. So that can be another one. So these are sort of the main risk factors. Checking in with yourself if you're like, oh, I meet one or more of those risk factors for socially isolating myself. So it might be that this stuff that I've been doing under the guise of self-care, taking time for myself, having more alone time to rest and rejuvenate, I think that I might be crossing over into the social isolation realm of things. And how you're going to know is if you are feeling more down, more disconnected, more depleted, more depressed. If you are taking time for yourself, that is truly about self-care, right? If you are taking alone time and quiet time, if you are kind of, taking some space from a bunch of social engagements and activities as a form of self-care, then you should be feeling better. You should be feeling more energized. You should be feeling happier. You should be just feeling elevated in some way. But if you are feeling depressed and down, then chances are it's moved from the self-care into self-destructive. So we're just going to go in briefly into some signs that you are socially isolating. If you do have some of these risk factors, here are some key signs. I just mentioned a few. Here are a few more. So if you find yourself avoiding social interactions that were at one time enjoyable, you used to go out more and now all of a sudden you're not. And it's not, again, because you've been setting healthy boundaries for yourself. It's because you're moving into that avoidance for other reasons that aren't necessarily about self-care. If you've been avoiding friends and family, people that you normally connect with, that you normally feel good around, you've just been not wanting to call them, not wanting to talk to them, not wanting to reply to their texts or their calls. And this can be another thing, goes for anyone in your life. You've just been avoiding texts, avoiding calls, trying to just keep yourself separate from people. That's another big sign. Another one is if you are not reaching out to talk to your friends or your loved ones about things that you normally would. So if you've been struggling and feeling down and feeling bad, but you're just like, no one's going to care, or I can't put forth the effort to call them, or I just don't feel like talking to anyone about it, but that's been going on pretty persistently for a while, that is another sign. If you have been canceling plans regularly or feeling some sense of relief when plans are canceled, again, separate from having a super full calendar, overcommitting yourself and being like, thank goodness this person canceled because I just need a quiet night to myself. But if this has been more of a trend where you tend to cancel most of your plans, or again, feel like a deep sense of relief, if you haven't canceled a plan yet and somebody else cancels it, then that is another sign that you are socially isolating. If you've been experiencing anxiety or panic when you think about going out and being social, that's another sign. If you have been feeling, like I mentioned, distressed or depressed during times of solitude, where you've been feeling down and lonely, but again, because social isolation can really amplify feelings of depression, you don't really feel like talking to anyone or being social. So then it just sort of compounds and gets to be even more destructive to your mental health and well-being. The next one is if you just don't want to leave the house. If you're finding that this has been going on for a while, you're making excuses to get out and be amongst the three-dimensional people, getting fresh air, seeing people in your neighborhood. You've just been kind of holding yourself up at home and you're not feeling better. You're not feeling good while doing that. That's another sign. If you've been feeling kind of dread when you think about social activities that you'd normally enjoy, that's another sign. If you've been spending large amounts of time at home that aren't characteristic for you and extremely limited contact with others, which is not also characteristic of you, and you're not feeling better because of it, you're not feeling more grounded, more calm, more balanced, more centered, you're feeling disconnected, lonely, and isolated, then that is another sign. And then again, if you are feeling bad about yourself, if you are spending a lot of time in isolation and not making social contact because there's some shame there, because you think other people don't really like you, you can't imagine how other people would really want to be around you, you've just sort of gotten stuck in this cycle of distorted beliefs about yourself. I'm not really good enough, I'm not very interesting, I'm not fun to be around, I'm not, very important, I don't bring any value, and you're stuck in this cycle of these distorted, destructive beliefs, and that is keeping you from being out and connected to others. And that is a sign that you are socially isolating. And then a lot of these are also about emotional isolation. So if you've noticed these happening, I want you to just bring some awareness to that. This isn't about judging yourself. This isn't about being, well, here's another thing that's wrong with me. Now I'm socially isolating. Absolutely not. We are not here to judge. We get information as a form of insight, because when we have insight, then that is the precursor. That is the foundation of making changes, of positive actions. When we sort of open our eyes and realize that there's a problem, that there's something that's not okay, then we can start to learn how to make the changes so that we can be thinking better, feeling better, living better, having better. Yeah? So please don't judge yourself. I know that your brain, especially if you have been isolating yourself, chances are there's some depression going on there as well. And depression likes to convince you that there's something wrong with you, that you're not good enough, that you're flawed, you're broken. See, here's one other thing that is messed up about me, right? Don't do it. Don't let depression convince you of that stuff. Just use this as some information to be like, okay, yeah, I see that this has become an issue. It's not good for me. I want to do something about it. And in the next talk, I'm going to teach you about what you can start doing about it. But in the meantime, just be gentle with yourself. If you want to, do some journaling, do some reflecting, get curious. What's been coming up for me? Why have I been socially isolating? That list of reasons why people typically do, doing some kind of self-reflection around that. And just sort of getting curious and getting more connected to yourself about what has been going on with you, offering yourself compassion for that. And then next week, next talk, we're going to talk about what to do about it. If you have been struggling with feeling good about yourself, if shame has been coming in and really creating a lot of unhelpful narratives for you, telling you you're not good enough, you have to become someone else in order to be lovable, you're not valuable enough, there's something wrong with you, then I want you to get my free guide on 6 simple ways to be yourself without apology. There's going to be some shame attacking exercises in there. There's going to be some tools and teachings that are going to help you learn how to be yourself, feel good about yourself. These are some foundational teachings for that. It's free. It's in the description below. You can grab that guide there. And you can do that while you wait for registration for the Shift Society to open up. This is my membership program, my exclusive membership program for people who want to take this work, this internal work about learning how to think better and feel better and live better and love better and have better to the next level and be guided and supported the whole way. You can get information about the Shift Society and get on the wait list in the description below. Check in with yourself. What do you need right now? Don't forget to be good to yourself, be good to those around you. And until next time, take good care.